I'll now recognize the representative from Pennsylvania, Ms. Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It should go without being said that children need to have quality reading and math instruction. We need to invest in these skills. That said, we also can't keep asking schools, educators, children, and families to do more with less. This committee is asking schools to improve math and reading scores while the Department of Education is being dismantled, while schools are dealing with ongoing disruptions from this administration, unexpectedly cutting and freezing funding for educational programs, while teachers face the impossible choice between a profession that they love and earning a dignified wage that would allow them to actually pay back their insurmountable student loan debt. While children have to sit in increasingly hot classrooms with worsening air quality and no HVAC systems, or while parents have to drop their kids off fearing that ice might be there waiting to separate them, or while students and staff have to walk into school every morning wondering if their school will be the next target of a mass shooting. If you want to support children's math and reading, we need to make sure that they have safe, well-resourced learning environments. And yet, just last night, Republican appropriators in the House voted to slash $12 billion from the Department of Education's budget, including cutting about $5 billion from Title I funding, almost a 30% decrease. Title I funds provide instructional support, enrichment activities, math and reading interventions, and so much more to school districts that don't have the luxury of millions of dollars in a property tax-based revenue. Dr. Brumley, we appreciate you being here to share Louisiana's story with NAEP scores and other successes. Are you able to share how much Title 1A funding Louisiana received for fiscal year 24 and 25?
Yes, ma'am. So we receive roughly $400 million.
And just yes or no, do you think Title I and other federal funding for things like reading specialists, math interventionists contributed to Louisiana's improvement in NAEP scores?
I think we've used all of our funding sources very well in a strategy to get better results for kids.
Certainly, and those ones specifically, did they contribute?
I think we've used all of our sources
So yes,
really well.
Given that the administration is proposing a 15% cut to federal education funding, bringing investment levels back to those of 2010, what steps is Louisiana prepared to take to protect students' learning if that funding is reduced, particularly in districts that rely heavily on federal support?
Yeah, so we're already engaged in academic return on investment procedures, and we've asked local systems to do the same. We want to make sure that we're focused on initiatives that matter most in that pursuit of academic excellence and teaching kids to read and do math.
So does that imply that there might be cuts?
You know, we just received this information this morning, so obviously we would work with the administration, we'd work with the secretary to learn more about the impacts of said cuts.
Thank you. We know that state budgets are not equipped to make up the educational funding shortfall that this administration is proposing. It's past time to abandon the playbook where the federal government removes the resources children need to succeed and then pushes them or punishes them, for failing systems. Dr. Wingfield, in your testimony, you highlighted that differences in race, income, and geography continue to shape who has access to high-quality instruction and who bears the burden when systems fail. Briefly, why is literacy instruction an equity and a civil rights issue?
Having access to strong literacy or being literate within our society allows for economic mobility and stability. Communities that are more literate are more civically engaged, and they also make better choices when it comes to their health and well-being.
Thank you. Your testimony also highlights the long history of racialized assumptions about intelligence that I can only assume are implicit in the types of instruction some folks want to reclaim. Given this history, can you explain why inclusive and culturally relevant curriculums are beneficial and why it's important, for example, for Black students to see themselves centered in stories when they learn or when they're learning to read?
Absolutely. So we need to create environments that are affirming and safe for students, all students, especially Black students, Latino students, students with disabilities, to feel affirmed and safe within the spaces so that they could take the educational risks that are appropriate for learning in classroom settings. We also need to create environments for those students that don't create erasure. They should be able to see themselves reflected back in that curriculum and through language and just possibilities for themselves outside of the school system. We also have to ensure that the different varieties of culture and language that students aren't coming to school with are being perceived as in a biased way from their school teachers, leading to the way in which they instruct their students. I just want to add one key point. I think it's commendable, the growth that Louisiana has made in their reading scores, but if we were to disaggregate that data and look specifically at Black students, you'll still see an overwhelming gap in the reading proficiency. So we can talk about the science of reading, which is incredibly helpful, and it does truly inform, and data truly informs instruction in classrooms, but we cannot ignore race when we're talking about literacy, because not all students are experiencing it or accessing it in the same way.
Thank you. I agree, and I appreciate your testimony. Thank you all so much for joining us today, and I yield back.
At a House Education Committee hearing before the congressional recess, Representative Summer Lee, Democrat, Pennsylvania, emphasized that children need strong reading and math instruction, but warned that these efforts cannot succeed if schools and families are consistently asked to do more with fewer resources. She pointed to ongoing disruptions caused by the Trump administration's education policies, including cuts and freezes to federal programs, leaving schools with fewer tools to raise student performance. Lee noted that teachers are often forced to choose between a career they love and earning enough to pay off crushing student loan debt, while students endure overcrowded classrooms, poor air quality, and the fear of ICE raids that threaten to separate families. She criticized Republican appropriators for recently voting to slash $12 billion from the Department of Education's budget, including a nearly 30% reduction to Title I funding, which provides support for reading specialists, math interventionists, and enrichment programs in low-income districts. Louisiana's state superintendent confirmed that the state received about $400 million in Title I funding for 2024 and 2025, acknowledging that such resources have been crucial for improving student performance. While he said the state is working to prioritize funding for academic initiatives, he admitted that the proposed federal cuts create uncertainty and potential risks for schools that depend on federal aid. Lee argued that state budgets cannot fill the gap left by federal cuts, condemning the long-standing pattern of stripping resources from schools and then punishing them for underperformance. Dr. Wheefield, another witness at the hearing, described literacy as a civil rights issue, explaining that communities with higher literacy rates enjoy stronger economic mobility, civic participation, and health outcomes. He added that inclusive, culturally relevant curriculums are essential to affirming students, especially Black, Latino, and disabled children, and to giving them the confidence to fully engage in learning. He warned that racial disparities in reading proficiency remain significant, even in states showing overall improvement, and urged lawmakers not to overlook how race shapes access to literacy. Lee closed her remarks by thanking the witnesses and reaffirming that safe, well-resourced schools are foundational to improving academic outcomes. She pressed her colleagues to abandon what she called a destructive playbook of reducing support while raising expectations, warning that without adequate investment, children will continue to be denied the education they deserve.